Usually when we look at national economics, we're squinting at these tiny incremental changes, a
Yeah.
GDP point here, a slight adjustment there.
Right, small movements.
But the data we're looking at today,
Yeah.
it's not a nudge. It's a fundamental flip in the demographic map of Mexico.
It really is a structural crossover. We aren't talking about some temporary blip on the radar.
No.
We're looking at a specific moment in time where the very definition of the majority in Mexico actually changed.
We have World Bank data here covering the spread from 2018 to 2024. And it just paints this picture of a massive reshuffling.
Mm-hmm.
And our mission for this deep dive isn't just to look at the numbers, but the why. Specifically, this political framework called the moral economy.
Which is a fascinating concept because the central argument there is that changing the vocabulary of economics, literally the words used in the law, that's what actually changed the outcome for millions of people.
Okay, but before we get to the philosophy, we have to visualize this data. I want you to picture a large X on a graph.
That's the perfect way to see it. Just two lines moving in opposite directions until they collide.
So let's start at the top left of that X.
Yeah.
Back in 2018, income poverty in Mexico was sitting at 35.5%.
That's more than a third of the population just struggling to meet basic needs.
And at that same moment, down at the bottom left of the graph, you had the middle class.
A significantly smaller group, only roughly, 27% of the population? So in 2018, the poor outnumbered the middle class by a pretty wide margin.
Now, you fast forward 6 years to 2024. This is where the lines cross. Poverty didn't just dip,
No, it plummeted down to 21.7%.
which is just a massive reduction in that time frame, but the surge on the other side is just as critical.
Oh, yeah. That middle class line shot up to 39.6%.
And there it is. That's the crossover. Middle class officially eclipsed the impoverished population, that whole poor majority dynamic.
Yeah.
It just got inverted.
It creates a completely different economic reality on the ground. But you have to ask, what drove that? Because numbers don't just move themselves.
Right, and that brings us to the source material on President Sheinbaum's administration.
Yeah.
They credit this moral economy framework. But let's be real for a second. Politicians love fancy titles for standard budgets.
Sure.
Is this actually different from just regular welfare?
The sources argue that it is, and it comes down to a distinction that sounds subtle, but it carries a lot of legal weight.
Okay.
It's the specific difference between assistance and rights.
So moving from something like charity to an entitlement.
Precisely. Historically, welfare is framed as assistance. It's something the government gives you because it's being benevolent, it's a safety net, but importantly, it's discretionary.
Meaning it can be cut if the budget gets tight or the political winds change.
Exactly. It implies that you should be grateful for the help, but you shouldn't necessarily expect it as a guarantee.
Okay, so how does the moral economy change that?
Well, it reframes that financial support not as help, but as a right.
A right.
Yeah.
Meaning, in the eyes of the state, getting that support is no different than your right to, say, free speech or a fair trial.
That is the core argument. When you classify economic floors like pensions or scholarships as rights, you're basically weaving them into the social contract.
So it stops being a program.
And it starts being a mandate, a legal obligation.
I can see how that changes the delivery mechanism. If it's a right, the government is legally obligated to pay it out no matter if it's convenient or not.
And it changes the psychology, too. It becomes less about surviving on temporary aid and more about stability that's guaranteed by the state. The theory is that the stability lets people take risks and make long-term plans.
The kinds of things that help build a middle class.
Exactly. The argument is that by treating these payouts as non-negotiable rights, the money gets to people more consistently, driving that poverty number down and pushing people up.
It's a bold experiment in in semantics meeting statistics.
It is.
So to recap this deep dive, in just 6 years, Mexico saw its lines cross. The middle class surged to nearly 40%.
Overtaking the poverty rate, which fell to roughly 22%. And that shift is largely attributed to this move from an economy of assistance to an economy of rights.
Now, here's something to think about. We see the success in the numbers, but if reframing welfare as a human right is the secret to reducing poverty, what happens when a recession hits?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Because assistance programs are designed to be paused or scaled back. But rights are supposed to be forever. Does the moral economy hold up when the money runs out?
That's the real test.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive.